documents.
Right there.
No way. That was not there yesterday. Well, I don't know, I didn't see it yesterday.
Well,
It's not
in
on-
defense of your behalf, during the power outage, we had a horrendous amount of trouble with controllers and interlinking and everything else. So if you tried anything the last couple of months or last week, you would have found out that the systems were all whacked.
Okay.
In defense.
Okay, all right, that's fine, but you see, it shows
Down,
that,
Ray.
so it goes from 2019
You scroll down. Sure.
to 2017. I don't see any reports from 2018 or earlier in 2019.
Yeah, there you go.
Oh,
So yeah.
what did you do, Ram?
I just sorted by date, so it just shows me all the,
Oh,
Yeah, otherwise
They're
when it
not
first
by
goes up, it
date.
doesn't necessarily show up that way.
oh, okay,
But it is on there, that's the.
sort by date. See, these are all little secrets that I just look at, it seems like it'd be a chronological order that they would do.
I think when it brings it up, it brings it up by alphabetical first.
Alphabet. All right, well, thank you, I appreciate it, yeah.
No problem. So continuing on, the AB 52 consultation, we met with UAIC in July.
UAIC is.
That was United Indian Community. And we met with them in July and discussed the cultural resources report. We've had a copy of it, they've been reviewing, we've had some dialogue with regards to that. We've also given the document to the Colfax Tahoe Consolidated Tribe. They're still reviewing the document, so we haven't met with them yet, so they get to do that. They want to set up a time for us to meet.
Is this formal tribal consultation?
Yes, yes.
So it's with the tribal leaders?
Right, or the representatives.
Okay.
Or the representatives.
You meet with the representatives, the professionals.
And then with regards to Nevada City Rancheria, we met with them in May. Told them that we have the documents ready for them to review. We just asked if they sign a non-disclosure agreement. We are still waiting for their signature on that so that we can execute that document.
Could you speak up?
Information.
Any idea why it takes so long to sign that?
No. Other than the balls in their court. Is that better?
Thank you, yes.
Okay. Next one, property acquisition. All property acquisitions have been placed on hold until further notice. There's been no movement with regards to that, and there are no additional meetings set up at this time other than this quarterly update that we do as part of the engineering committee. So the next one will be on December, engineering committee in December, and that'll be the fourth quarter update for this project. With regards to the budgetary impact, we'll go through these really quickly. Since our meeting in July, discussion, we've had a little over $17,000 been put into the consulting work. That's most of that I talked about before, which is the AB 52 consultation, as well as some stuff related to the alternatives analysis. We've got $600 in the property acquisition. That was actually for work done in April. It just got invoiced late and then got paid in this July to September timeframe, which is why it shows up there. But the work was actually done in April. Property revenue and expenses, you can see that revenue exceeded expenses by a little over $42,000. Property purchase, there is none, as discussed before. All acquisitions have been placed on hold. $3,600 for staff and $384 in legal costs, and that was actually for work done in March as well. That was just posted late, so that work was done back in March.
Why are staff and legal costs not included in the total? And it seems like you would keep them with.
So we wanted to show them in terms of how staff is working on and legal in terms of the project, but they're budgeted elsewhere in the budget, so they don't come out of the centennial budget, they come out of the budget, and I don't know the number.
So they come out of the general staffing budget, but at the end of the project, they'll be rolled into the
They'll be
total
rolled
budget
into it.
cost.
But they're not coming down, they're not taking from the $1.7 million budgeted for this year, which is why we want to keep them separately. But we still want to be able to show that we have been working on it and how much we've been doing. So overall, you can see that, we effectively spent no budget yet at this point because the revenues have exceeded expenditures by $39,738. Any questions?
Okay. I have two comments is currently we have a little over $1.2 million remaining in this budget for this year. Our intent is it's was supposed to go to the board last week without the power outage. It's $200,000 that would be moved to water meters. And any remaining funds would be moved to the Lake Wildwood that project. And
Under budget amendment.
yeah, under a budget amendment when we get the contract. I want to tell you that budget's not gonna, it's going to other places this time and not being directed toward property purchase. The other question I have, and it has to do with time and staff time. At this point, there's no activity other than a little bit of activity on this project. It takes somewhere in the area of 3 to 4, maybe even 5 hours to have finance, engineering, MAs, and everybody put this together. It's costly to put this report together. Currently, we're in agreement to do it on quarterly to the engineering committee. With this current status, it's my recommendation that we reduce that to every 6 months. And due to the fact is there's nothing going on, and you are spending staff time that could be used on other resources, and they could be used in other places. I'm leaving that up to the discretion of the general manager, but I'm looking at what we have and everybody here.
This is your report. If you guys want it, continue on a quarterly basis, we're happy to continue to do it. There isn't much going on the project at this point. We're still in the IR, and we're still doing the AB 52, but these are very long processes, so. Quarterly is fine, we're happy to continue to do it.
And if anything did change, it would come up in the monthly
It would come up in the
engineering meetings to cue us up that there's renewed activity.
Right.
Project status would always just have a little blurb of what's going on in it.
But
And
that blurb thinned down because we were providing a quarterly report. That blurb will increase in its description.
it could be thought about and discussed with the general manager later on, or however, but I'm trying to keep our staff working on other stuff that is more close, not the long-term problem.
As you guys like.
I have no objection to it being reduced to semi-annually with the understanding that if there is movement within the project, that be highlighted at the next engineering committee, project status report. And the public should be kept aware of movements in the project.
What we'll do is make more comments in the engineering project status under Centennial, compared to relying on this quarterly update. And then if those comments become that people wanna go back to quarterly,
Laura, do you agree?
I guess so, yeah. I wasn't thinking about it, but yeah, I agree with it. If we're not doing any work and we're just making money on it, its revenue is interesting to me. So in the monthly report, you would give a brief summary of the budget and how, expenditures, just to.
No, we wouldn't do that, but we'll talk about where we are in the EIR, we can talk about where we are with the AB 52. The quarterly will carry the finances. I mean, that's a bigger pull, right? I mean, it's getting updated.
remember, we have to, finance has to pull all the records.
Yeah.
They have to confirm the records, we have to type the records in, we have to go through all the records, and then compare them to the last time. So it's a work, I mean.
And this will be changed when we get our new finance system in place. I mean, I've had QuickBooks since 2000, and I do a project numbering report, and and it just spits it out, and maybe I don't understand the accounting process.
No, it's the same thing. This is nothing different, right? The issue is that engineering makes the call to finance spits out the number, they go through the record, make sure everything's, essentially run a small audit trail, and give the numbers back to Doug, and Doug puts them in the report. It's staff. Gary's not wrong, 4 to 5 hours is what we're putting into the report quarterly. If it's still useful to you guys, then we'll keep it going. If you don't think it's useful, or you think that we should be spending our time elsewhere, then we're happy to do that, and we're happy to make the project status report more robust so that you have, and the public has an idea of what's happening on the project. At this point, we're running under contract for the EIR, and we're doing the AB 52 stuff, which the public can only see that we're engaged in the process.
And we were gonna put, it seemed like months ago, we were gonna put a cap on
So the APC is still trudging through that, but we haven't had, yeah, we just haven't been able to get to that spot.
Because that would make me feel a little better about it if I wouldn't mind.
Well, but I think the board has the ability to, as you'll see in the budget, the board essentially is in the capital budget, which you guys have already gone through, you set the cap at 500,000 next year.
It's in the budget for the next
Next
year.
budget, so if they, that's,
But that's another discussion.
yeah.
So I prefer to hear from the public on it or just,
I just have a question, Sid Brown, and that is, you still are required to file quarterly reports already? So I'm just curious how much this actually would save, this proposal.
So it doesn't have anything to do with the finance, which is the biggest component of this update, is going through the finance stuff, the small audit that William's talking about, and confirming all those numbers. That information does not go to the state water resources control board. It's just more of an update of what we've been doing in the last quarter.
So I mean, I don't understand why that information couldn't continue as, and, you know, my preference is more information. If it could be done quickly, easily, efficiently, that's good, and I have one other
This is
question.
government, there's no quick, easy, and simple.
It's government.
Oh, I know. And the other question is, in the past, I mean, it's relatively recently that the rental incomes have been recorded as part of the centennial financial reporting. So just as a comment, I'm not asking for more work, but I'm curious if the information is easily available of all the preceding income that has been received from those rental properties and how that would measure up. Because right now we have a very short window of, you know, cash positive for Centennial compared to the outflow that has occurred in previous years. So I'm just curious when those revenues started to become so significant, that's all.
But the only reason you see them now is because the expenses to the project are almost zero.
Okay, so
Right.
now they've, okay.
Good morning, Tracy Sheehan, Foothills Water Network. I wanted to give a specific comment having to do with how the expenses are tracked now, and Sid kind of alluded to that. I think it's really important for the public to have a good understanding and have useful information right at their fingertips to understand how much money has been spent on Centennial. And I think about March, the revenues, the rental revenues have been added back in. So it's difficult to understand, as a public and a stakeholder, to understand in a snapshot, you know, 50,000 or 100 or 150,000 spent on Centennial. When you decide to add in the revenues, it's confusing. You can't really, in a snapshot, say, yes, this is how much we actually spent outside of the revenues. And then when I hear that the staff numbers and the other numbers are being treated differently, I think that complicates it. So I think you need to have a reason to actually add the revenues back in. And I would really suggest that you consider, if the public just wants to understand how much has been spent on Centennial this year in a lump sum, to be able to have that right at their fingertips. And true, if there's revenue coming in from rentals, you can put that down. But it's very hard to understand, especially in this report that's supposed to focus on Centennial. It's hard to see that. And it's hard to see it in the warrants each month when it's reported to the board. So I would really suggest that you consider going back to another way so that the public can see this is actually just how much is spent, even if it's very small.
Isn't the rental income added back in at the request of the auditors?
At the requirement of the auditors, but Tracy, every number is here. All you have to do is add the positive numbers and you'll know what was spent.
Right, I guess if it was a separate line item that actually showed this is the actual revenue, because the expenses just sort of disappear into it. You see what I'm saying? You're saying, just showing a positive outcome instead of saying, this is actually the revenue from the rentals.
So the expenses on that line are just expenses for the rentals only?
Okay,
It's not for any other part of the project, which is what the other numbers are reflecting. The consulting number, the staff time, et cetera, that's.
okay, that's helpful, but I think what happens is it becomes one soup, let's say, you know, so when you get to the warrants in each month, you can't actually see, you know, the actual, what was actually spent, because the revenues actually just get folded in. The only way you would understand in the public, which is kind of what I do sometimes, is I go through the warrants and I know exactly all the expenses minus staff time.
The warrants show you exactly what's spent on the
But
project.
not in the summary, it doesn't.
Yes, it does.
Well, it does in the way that you're defining it, including the revenues.
No, revenues are not in that line.
Okay, so when I look at the project balances to date at the last page of the warrants, it includes the revenues. There's an asterisk that says it includes the revenues,
Okay.
right? So that's, if you need that to be there, then I can understand that, but I feel like it should be separated out, so you can say, this is actually what the total expenditures are.
And that's here. Right. It's right here in front of you.
Okay, I'll have to look at the numbers again to understand that, but in the month-to-month, what triggered this is when you started saying, well, every 6 months now, we're gonna do less reporting. People wouldn't actually know, it's, you know, you'd have to wait every 6 months to actually see just what the expenditures are outside of the rental revenue. That's the point.
Okay.
Thanks.
Good morning, Ashley Overhouse with the South Beaver River Citizens League. I'd just like to echo Tracy's request, just to make it a tad clearer on the summary budget under budgetary impact, where it says property expenses / in parentheses revenue, just separating those into two different lines. I know that the expenses are probably minor, and like you said, Doug, with expenses towards, you know, the rentals are just like property expenses and upkeep and that kind of thing. It's just, I guess making it a little clearer, and you're right, Rem, in terms of you can figure it out in terms of adding. It's just that a little bit of easier optics and transparency. It will make it a little bit easier to understand completely. And I really appreciate, Gary, the two comments of where some of this budget is being redirected to. We're very happy to hear that in terms of just, you know, where the money's being spent. It's helpful to include in context when you're understanding a big project update like this. I think that that's nice to hear. And we want to thank you for including those in terms of reviewing this project update. And I also want to urge that these reports be kept quarterly. Staff time I know is expensive, especially when putting together a detailed report, but since you've already spent, according to this, over 14 million on this project in 5 years, and though there's not much activity happening now, it's still helpful for the public and your customers to see what is happening transparently, at least quarterly, on such a big investment that they've already had updates on so far, at least quarterly. So I appreciate consideration of those comments and those reports quarterly. Thank you.
Steve Pettit, North Auburn. First of all, under the property acquisition, it says all property acquisitions have been placed on hold, and I applaud you for that. But further, it goes on to say until further notice. How long are we gonna keep the property owners that are in the proposed reservoir footprint? How long are we gonna keep them under this cloud? We've already spent, according to the numbers here, $14 million in 5 years. It should be a point at which we, cut bait and go.
Currently, the directive to staff is to suspend all property acquisitions at the district until the bankruptcy is completed at PG.
So the bankruptcy at PG&E is what's affecting that decision.
Correct.
So it really isn't NID pulling back, it's because of outside factors you're putting a stop, not because of a decision by NID.
The board made the decision, yes. And it wasn't just Centennial property. All property acquisitions for non-approved projects have been suspended.
Well, my concern is the people that are in the reservoir footprint.
Agreed.
They are in jail right now, and they have been for 5 years. And at some point, we have to give these people a clear view of their future. And I don't see that happening here, so please be.
Mike Pasner, Indian Springs. How much money does it cost us to report quarterly versus biannually?
Say about $400 to $500 per time.
$400 to $500, thank you.
Okay, so we've been cautioned about being efficient. I'm putting that to the committee to say we could be more efficient, and I don't see it through this time. That's the reason I'm bringing it up, because the fact is we're trying to make sure that we're not doing reports that are unnecessary.
Thank you.
Diana Suarez, Colfax, California. I had a couple questions on the hydrology and the water availability. I'm wondering if Yuba County is claiming any of the unimpeded flow that goes down the Bear River now in their voluntary agreement for the Delta with the Department of Water Resources. And I'm wondering how that would cut into NID's potential water rights claim. And then I have another question. Is South Sutter Water District hoping to raise Camp Far West 5 feet, and how will that cut into NID's water rights claim? And I don't know if either one of those are true, but these are things I have heard, and that's what I have. Thank you.
Was this addressed in the staff report, or is this outside the staff report comment?
These are questions I have about the Centennial Project, which, I didn't get a copy of the staff report because you didn't have that many, but I got the agenda, and it said Centennial, so I'm asking a couple questions about Centennial. Thank you.
At this point, if there's no other questions, I don't answer. To answer? Discuss.
All right, so, this does not, so right now, South Sutter has not fully utilized its water rights, and so they're anticipating full utilization. So it has nothing to do with Centennial's filing. With regard to the VSAs, that's up to them.
Any other comments on Centennial? At this time, I'd like to close item number 4. And